Your house has been listed for months. You're losing money every single day and you just need to sell. But instead, you're bleeding. An offer finally comes in. You take it. You think the nightmare is over, but it's not. The terrifying truth is realized you can't even sell if you wanted to. The proceeds from the sale won't even cover your mortgage. You don't get a check on closing, you get a bill instead, a nasty one. You now owe the bank thousands just to walk away from your own home. This is the mortgage trap many sellers across Canada are facing right now. Yes, prices are falling across Canada, but let me show you what these spiraling home prices actually mean for distressed sellers that nobody's talking about. Hi, my name is Zen. If you enjoy my data-driven and number-crunching real estate updates, be sure to like and subscribe. In the last 2 months, I've been getting a lot of calls from a lot of people in regards to selling a property. And one of the things that I've been arriving at a lot right now, especially in a market where we're trending downwards, is some of these sellers are actually in what we call a negative equity position. And that's a technical term, but you may have heard it as underwater. And what that basically means is the amount of mortgage that you actually owe is larger than what the value of the home is. So when you actually sell a property, you have to discharge or get rid of your mortgage so that you can actually transfer your property to the new buyer. But when the property is worth less than what your mortgage is worth, meaning the mortgage is higher, you cannot actually discharge your mortgage or get rid of it to give it and sell it to the buyer without chipping money in because there's not enough proceeds from the sale of your home. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of right now when I'm talking to people who are calling me, whether they're calling me because they want a second opinion or I'm the second agent. And they have to unfortunately hear the sad truth where even if they sell right now, from what I can see in the market, they may not have enough money to discharge it. And it's very, very sad to see this because going from peak of the market to now, we have seen prices drop 25%. And when you have your conventional down payment being 20%, the equity from the top to the bottom has been wiped out. But as the market continues grinding downward slowly, the ride up to the top where people have been buying on the way up, that equity slowly gets grinded down because the value of everyone's home has been dropping for the last 9 months. So I'm going to walk through an example of what negative equity is so that you understand that if you are selling, you need to calculate this to make sure you're not in a negative equity position. Or if you're planning to sell, make sure you're not in a negative equity position and hope that the market's going to get better in the spring because it's not. The inventory is still so high that you will be chasing the market down, and I don't want your equity to get wiped out as you're chasing the market down. Before you even think about selling, don't let another chatbot price your biggest asset. Your property is not just another number. Hit the link in the description below and I'll send you a personalized assessment with real data and expert insights so you can sell with confidence on your terms. And I'm making this video because I don't think the market is going to get any better in spring because now we're getting to that point where, hey, fall is kind of ending. And you know what? Optimistically, let's wait for a better spring. It's not going to get better. The inventory is still very high. So let's go through the example that's on the screen right now. So the seller, if they bought the property for $1 million, this was before the CMHC mortgage rules over $1 million for less than 20% down happened. So they would have to do 20% down. And very simple layman conventional way is you have a $200,000 down payment and then you have a mortgage or a loan of $800,000, which is very simple. Now, where the problem comes into play is if you were to sell the property right now and when you bought the property for. So in this example, let's just use the latest headlines about, hey, what is the fall from the peak over here? And it says we've fallen now 20% from the peak. I would argue if you're in GTA, if you bought at the absolute peak, which is $1.35 million, and you get yourself to $1,064,000, that's about 25% drop off. So that would be the maximum peak. But obviously this varies depending on when you bought the property and how much you bought it for and what it's going to drop. But I'm just using it as an average right now. So let's say the price of your property is down 10% and you have to sell. So you have to sell and discharge your current mortgage right now. And where this $786,000 from is actually over here, where after 1 year, the amount of principal you would have paid back is this much. So this is the amount of mortgage remaining. So you have to discharge that. Now, after discharging that, you still have $113,000 remaining in the call it proceeds, you have to pay your commissions for selling, your legal fee, and you also have to discharge this mortgage. So in my example right now, I have a 5% selling fee. Your legal is $1,500 plus HST, and your mortgage discharge here is basically call that a variable, which is about 3 months interest, which is this amount over here times 3. That's essentially how I'm arriving at. So that means you would still get $52,000 in your pocket. So you would still get a check when you close it. Now, hypothetically, in the scenario where, hey, if your price fell from the peak 20%, let's say you do sell for 20% drop, which is less than what it would be. So call it $800,000 off your $1 million purchase price. That means you still have to discharge your $786,000 mortgage, which is all the same as in this little box over here. Your commissions are a little bit less because it's a lower selling price. Your legal and your mortgage discharge is roughly the same. Now, this box over here is red because it means that you owe $41,000 to actually sell the property. And this is where problems come in, because I've had a lot of people call me as a second agent where maybe the property was worth $900,000 at the start of the year, and now it's dropped anywhere between 5 to 8%, and they're at $800,000, and they're trying to sell it. But when they're getting offers, they're saying, hey, I can't actually sell it for that price because I don't have money to discharge this. Or even worse, you accept the offer and then you are going to breach as a seller on closing date because you don't have the money to come up with that amount of funds to actually sell. And here's the problem that I'm seeing more and more, where a lot of people are hoping that the market's going to rebound in hopes that they don't have to pay or cut this check for $41,000. But that's the wrong frame of mind, because when I'm talking to a lot of people, unless they accept reality, a lot of them are still hoping that maybe the market is going to become better. So let's go through a scenario where, we have the 25% drop where we saw from over here to here. What if it's that high? So now what's going to happen is if, say, it goes 25% drop, you're now selling your property for $750,000. That means you still have to discharge the same amount of mortgage. Your commission is going to be a little bit less. You still have the legal, and then you still have your mortgage discharge, which means now you're owing more money and you have to cut even a larger check. So you're kind of digging yourself into a bigger and bigger hole just by hoping the market's going to get better, because you don't want to accept facts that, hey, you should sell your property and actually have to cut the check. Because what's going to happen is until the market rebounds, you're going to have to make a decision as a seller on whether you're going to be carrying this property or going to cut a check. And this is where I even find buyers getting frustrated, because when you have a buyer want to say, hey, I'm going to pay you fair market price for this, but the seller's not accepting a fair market price, sometimes I actually find it's because the mortgage is too high and they can't accept something lower. So in these situations, when I'm trying to explain it to the seller, I'm like, well, if you do not want to cut the check, whether for $41,000 or $89,000 or even more in the future, you're basically going to have to be stuck with the bill of carrying this thing for a negative amount. And this is a very key component where I am seeing a lot of properties, whether freehold or condo, move towards the rental space because the math just makes more sense. And the idea of losing money on your real estate investment just doesn't work, because some people, I think, have accepted the fact that, hey, I may lose the money I've invested into the property, but it stings even more when you have to cut a check to lose even more money on top of what you already invested into the property. So a lot of the times the conversation becomes talking about, hey, what is it going to cost to carry the property? So in this $1 million example, it would be in a house. If you did have the mortgage at 30 years, your payment at 4.25% is going to be about $4,000, give or take. So after taxes and property insurance, you can rent the property out for $4,200. Now, here's where the math comes in. When I present this to the seller, they're like, well, at the end of the day, if every single month I am only paying $310, I might as well just hold on to it, because the idea of losing $310 a month slowly is way better than losing 5 figures right away and you have to cut a check for that. Or even worse, they don't even have the money for that, so they have to actually pay that on top. And this is where I'm seeing a lot more people inching slowly and slowly closer to a power of sale, because if their rents aren't that great, say maybe it's $3,500, and they cannot sustain the minus $1,000 a month, this is where they're going to get closer and closer to mortgage delinquency, which is when they cannot actually make the mortgage payments, and that's when the banks will take a power of sale. And in those positions, a lot of the times the power of sale takes a long time to be worked down, because they have to still try to recoup the loan and what the market value is. Because if the banks, when they're selling it via power of sale, don't do that, they could actually get sued for damages. So when I go through the math of a lot of clients at $310, they're like, well, it's not that bad you know what, maybe I'll go up that route. And when I also explain to them, hey, you know what, maybe if I actually include the amount of principal recapture every single month at $1,100, I'm actually going to be positive. So that's why I'm seeing a lot more properties actually go from sell to rent, or they try to go both at the same time, because unless they're getting an offer that satisfies them, because psychologically to, cut a check to sell your property is just very hard. And that's where a lot of them will be, hey, you know what, I'm gonna end up renting my property. And that's why I'm seeing a lot of properties actually go for rent and for lease 3 to 6 months a little bit afterwards, because they've done this math, or at least the people I've talked to that have called me about, hey, how do I solve my problem right now? This is what we are seeing. This is why I do think that the amount of inventory that we're going to have is going to dwindle and it's going to move to the rental supply. So what's going to happen over time is this seller or landlord is subsidizing the tenant so that they don't have to cut a check or lose additional money because of the way the market is right now. And this is why we're going to continue seeing rental prices continue going down and down and down, because there's a lot of underwater properties that may not actually surface in the market, because holding out mathematically makes a lot more sense and it's just psychologically easier to digest. And this is exactly why I think the inventory is going to keep decreasing in the next little bit, even though it's very, very high right now. But don't mistakenly for saying that, hey, the inventory is going to decrease and prices are going to go up. It's not like that at all. I'm just going to say a lot of inventory, or the sellers are going to not try selling anymore because they would have rented out their property. And this is why we're going to continue seeing rents go down and down. And there will be some off cases where some of these people are kind of stubborn and they're going to eventually go delinquent, and then they're going to get power of sold. And that's where some of the pressure is going to be released in the high inventory market that we're in right now. But don't get me wrong, the inventory is still so high that I was saying in the last video in 2025, if you want your listing to go into like a graveyard and to do nothing, this is a year to list it on. So to understand more about what's happening on how 2025 has the most amount of listings ever, make sure you check out the video that's on the screen right now. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya.